Hello everybody, how are you doing? It's me, Macca, and if you are unaware, today is the official launch of a game. Frankly, it feels like more than a decade in the making, you know? People have been wanting this for so long, and it's finally here. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Some people have already been playing it for a few days. It's so good. It's so good. But that's not me. No. See, I'm waiting until the actual day of release because that Ultimate Edition cover for the physical sucks really bad. So in the meantime, I have been playing Metaphor ReFantazio. I did get a code supplied from Sega. However, I haven't really been able to play that much more than what was in the demo. Number of things have just been going on in my life, so as a result, I haven't had as much time with it as I would have liked, or as some other people I know. I know some people have put tens of hours into it already, but I wanted to give my general thoughts and impressions so far because, frankly, I am loving it. This is fantastic. I feel like Game of the Year this year from Mr. Jeff Keelam's Game Awards. Game of the Year, there are 3 games that are probably going to be on lock in terms of being nominated. One is Black Myth Wukong. Another is Astrobot, and I'll be completely honest, Astrobot should absolutely win. And then the third one is Metaphor ReFantazio. This game is so good. Let me get my thoughts out. First off, story and characters. What's really grabbing me so far is not actually the story. I mean, the story is good, don't get me wrong. The characters are also really neat too, but what's really grabbing me right now is the world. The world itself and its world building is incredible. I'm so used to Atlas games taking place in a version of the real world where you can assume a lot of stuff, you know, like no matter what, even with all of this magical stuff going on, there's still gonna be a degree of realism that this world is going to be how it is. This is Tokyo. This is someplace in Japan. It's always going to be, to a certain level, it's always going to be grounded. Here, that's not the case in the slightest. This is a brand new world that they're introducing us to, and this world needs to be built up. They need to fill it out, and frankly, they're doing a really good job with it so far. They're coming up with a lot of interesting original concepts, as well as putting a bunch of distinctly Atlas spins on old classic fantasy tropes. For instance, Magla. Magla, it's just, if you played Xenoblade or any of the Xeno games, it's ether, it's mana, it's the building blocks of life. But this time, this one's called Magla. And the thing about Magla is that it is basically just magnetite from SMT in a lot of ways, but it's also being expanded into more the general, like, oh, all life, you know, Magla kind of matters for more than just demons. And it's really fun, you know? It's really fun. It's really interesting. It's grabbing me. All these various different tribes and like what makes them unique and how they play a role in the political system of the world and all the various, you know, the racism, which, you know, hey, I can't believe Atlas went woke. Can you believe it? My God. Something I'm very happy about, by the way. There is a ton of very on-the-nose symbolism and metaphor that isn't immediately followed up with a character spelling out and explaining to you the symbolism. Just because, you know, hey, maybe you don't understand what's going on here. Maybe you don't understand that the racism that's going on between these fantasy tribes is actually, it's a metaphor for real life racism. Or maybe you didn't understand that this guy who imagines a quote unquote fantasy world where everything is perfect and it's better. Maybe he, you know, he's this author that wishes for more and his name is More. Do you get it? I'm so glad that it's like, yeah, it's very on the nose. I am fine with on the nose metaphor, allegory, symbolism. I'm fine with it. Just don't explain it and act as if I don't understand it, and I'm so happy they don't do it this time, because P5 was really bad about it. But this time, oh, thank God. Just let it be. Just let it be. I'm very happy that they did this. Something I will say that I have a little bit of issue with is some things feel a little contrived or out of nowhere. For instance, the Necromancer. This dude is never mentioned, he's never shown, and he may as well have even existed until the exact moment where the game introduced him, and it's like, oh crap, we need someone for you to go against that isn't Luis. And as a result, it's just very jarring when he shows up. He's just this dude who works for Luis. He believes in him. He was never shown before, but then it's like, oh, this guy is effectively the Kamoshida of the game, or of, you know, he's the first boss you're supposed to go against, the first ruler of the palace, if you will. And he just appears. The game spends like 6 hours building up Luis specifically, and then obviously we're not going to be fighting him first thing off, but it's like, maybe you could have set this guy up a little bit better. I don't know, it just felt like it just kind of happened. Now, obviously, gameplay-wise, Metaphor is going to be most comparable to Persona, but I think it takes a number of different concepts and mechanics and ideas from various different Atlus games, while putting enough a unique spin on them to make them feel fresh. For instance, Press Turn. Press Turn is forever my favorite turn-based combat system, and that remains true here. Though, so far, I'll be honest, I don't think I'll end up liking it as much as it is in SMT5, but it is still really good here. It feels very different from what I would get in an SMT game, in large part because of the archetype system. Now, the archetype system is just a job system that's being paraded around as if they're personas, but trust me, they are nothing like personas. It's really cool to just at a moment's notice switch out my entire party's makeup no matter where I am, and I don't need to worry about like, oh, I'm missing this one demon, or oh, I need a persona that has this, and this. No, it's just in a moment's notice, I can go into the menu, just swap that stuff out. Oh, all I need is Magla to get certain moves or to inherit certain items, or sorry, not items, inherit skills, all this stuff. It feels a lot more streamlined in a sense. It's a lot more simple and easy to understand, but it's still just as complex, just in a different way. I'm also really happy that all of this applies for the entire party and not just the main character. I'm really glad that's something that they didn't keep around from Persona. Speaking of freeing, the entire game so far feels so much more flexible than this team's previous title, Persona 5, particularly in the beginning. P5 kept teasing you with sequences in the first dungeon that were ultimately pretty short and felt incredibly railroaded. Battles were fun, but it felt like the game was only allowing me to play so much. Metaphor, on the other hand, is a lot better, giving you a couple of different mini dungeons to run through prior to the first proper one that actually has, you know, a deadline. Not only are these mini dungeons longer than the equivalent sequences in P5, but it helps give this feeling that you're making genuine progress and that you aren't just going through this non-stop stop and go tutorial in which you're like, oh, look, it's the thing you want to run around. Oh, no, never mind. No, actually, you're not allowed to really run around it, not of your own accord, at least. It's just a lot better, and it made the entire opening sequence of the game feel so much more like, oh, I'm doing stuff. I'm not just sitting here watching characters, you know, have drama. I'm actually playing a game. Now, the side content from what I've played so far seems very fleshed out, surprisingly so. I just went and did an entire optional mini dungeon once I actually got to the first proper dungeon, and it took me like a solid hour to run through it all. And then at the end, there was this really hard boss that I had to go in and just swap out my archetypes and how my party worked, and it was really cool. I liked it a lot, and I didn't need to do any of this, but it felt like, oh, this is like a decent chunk of game that I could have just completely ignored and just not done, you know? All of this is kept within the calendar framework that Metaphor is inheriting from Persona, and it works really well. I like it a lot. I'm very happy with it so far. I don't have too much to say about like the audio, the music, and all that, other than it's incredible. I love the Esperanto chanting, despite how goofy it can be at times. It gives me flashbacks to Strange Journey, only this time the chanting is much more pronounced. I also really have to highlight the voice acting. It's incredible so far. I don't think there's ever been an Atlas dub that's been bad, and I really, really like how there is a mixed cast between the typical, like, oh, California-based voice actors, but then there's also a number of UK voice actors in the mix that are just, it's so good. It overall kind of helps give this feeling that this is more than just another anime game. Like, it has its own unique vocal identity, and I like it a lot. It's very Xenoblade in a sense, you know? Lastly, the overall presentation is immaculate, just like with P5. At first, I felt like the style was kind of overwhelming. The UI constantly has moving lines that my eyes want to follow, and there's just like so many just moving pieces, and there's so much detail. My eyes glazed over a little too easily, but I got used to it. I got used to it as time went on. I especially really love how the character models are shaded in a way that makes them look very painterly. But just it's so good. It's so unique. I don't even know what to say that couldn't have already been said about P5. It's amazing, and it continues the high bar Atlas has set for art directions. And now comes the part where I feel like I'm gonna get some people mad at me. But listen, I'm not saying any of this next bit ruins the experience. It's just some things that caught my eye that I think is worth critiquing. The game occasionally can look and feel like a PS3 game, likely due to running on what I understand to be the exact same engine as P5, which, despite what people think, P5 is actually a PS3 game. For P5, I was able to accept a lot of those like janky animations and awkward level geometry because so much of it was just, the style was just so immaculate and it was so just revolutionary that I was able to let a lot of it go. But this time, almost 10 years later, it's a lot harder to just kind of excuse, if you know what I mean. There are little things like, oh, this animation just looks really weird. It looks very dated. It can hurt the overall experience and make it feel older than it actually is. I was kind of hoping, when I was doing my SMT5 review, which, hey, that came out last week, go watch it, please. When I was doing that, I was hoping that, oh, this game, Metaphor, is gonna come along and it is going to be better visually than SMT5 Vengeance. But not exactly. I still think, for me, art style aside, I think from a technical perspective, SMT5 Vengeance is probably the best looking Atlas game ever, at least as of right now. Metaphor looks really good, and the art style, the art direction is just it's so good. But there's a couple of moments where jank creeps in, and it just feels older. It feels older, and it doesn't ruin the experience. I don't want anyone yelling at me, but it's just certain moments where I'm like, I was kind of hoping that we wouldn't need to have facial animations, lip syncing animations that look like this in 2024. Something just not this, I guess. Hopefully in a sequel, they'll be able to iron out a lot of these little issues, this jank, but, you know, that will only come along assuming this game sells well, which I get the feeling it will. What do you think about Metaphor ReFantazio? Let me know down in the comments below, and while you're there, leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of my future uploads. Also, check out my Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to all of my videos a day before everyone else. I'm gonna get back to playing more Metaphor. You guys have a nice day. Goodbye, and enjoy Dragon Ball Sparking Zero.
Run.